Good evening, everybody. Long-awaited completing the square video. So, in completing the square, you should have your steps right there with you. Write the equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Divide by a, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to do. So here on number 1, we already have, so we are going to subtract by 2. Because we want x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we have r squared minus 8r, and then we have negative 18 minus 2, or negative 20, equals 0. Now we're going to add 20 to both sides. We get r squared minus 8r equals 20. Why do I leave a blank there? Well, it's so I can complete the square. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write down my b's. b equals negative 8. b over 2 equals negative 4. And b over 2 squared equals 16. Again, follow these step by step. So this is to add c to both sides. Or subtract c from both sides. Because we had, our c was a negative 20, and we ended up adding 20 to both sides. Then it says add b over 2 squared to both sides. So our b over 2 squared is 16. We're going to add 16 to both sides. So now we have r squared minus 8r plus 16 equals 36. So that's our perfect square. So now we can write out r minus or plus b over 2. b over 2 is negative 4. So we have r minus 4 squared. Now if we were to FOIL that out, what we'd get is r squared minus 8r plus 16. So that's actually why we're doing this. So that is the completing the square, that step. That was number 16. And then we're going to equal 36. Now we need to get r by itself, so we are going to take the square root of both sides. And that's going to give me r minus 4 equals plus or minus 6. It's important to keep the plus or minus there. Why? Because both are correct. If I square 6, I get 36. If I square negative 36, if I square negative 6, I get 36. Which means that the square root of 36, or that number which can be squared to reach 36, is plus and minus 6. Then add 4 to both sides, and I get r equals 4 plus or minus 6. So here's where I have two answers, okay? So I have 4 plus 6, 4 minus 6, or r equals 10 or negative 2. So the vast majority of these are going to have two answers because it is a parabola. You're looking for a zero, right? So if I have, and why that makes sense is if I have this graph right here that goes like this, I have two zeros. This would be r equals 10, and this right here would be r equals negative 2. Okay, next up, number 2. I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Now that's going to give me 5a squared minus 20a plus 25 equals 0. Now here I'm going to have to divide by 5. Because remember, what I need is that form to be x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, so that gives me a squared minus 4a. That's an a right there. I forgot to put the 4a in. Plus 5 equals 0. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both. Actually, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I get a squared minus 4a equals 5. So my b equals negative 4. My b over 2 equals negative 2, which means my b over 2 squared equals 4. Okay? I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And I'm going to get a squared minus 4a. I don't know why I keep dropping the a. Plus 4 equals 9. So that's going to give me a minus 2. That's my b over 2. Squared equals 9. Square root both sides. I get a minus 2 equals positive or negative 3. Add 2 to both sides. And so I get a equals 2 plus or minus 3, a plus 2, a equals 5, that's 2 plus 3, or negative 1, 2 minus 3. Okay. Okay, next up, oh, we're going to do number 4. Oh, so I moved it. Okay, so that's what happened. I just got confused. Okay. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. So we're going to get m squared minus 10m plus 2 equals 0. So we're going to then subtract 2 from both sides, and we get m squared minus 10m equals negative 2. So here our b equals negative 10, b over 2 equals negative 5, and b over 2 squared equals 25. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides. I'm going to get m squared, or m minus 5 squared equals 27, or 23, 25 minus 2. So now notice when I take the square root of both sides, I have m minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 23. Up until now, we've been dealing with perfect squares. But now we have a non-perfect square, so we're just going to leave it as a square root of 23. We're going to add 5 to both sides, and we get m equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 23, and that's actually our answer. Moving on. So now we're on the more difficult ones. So here what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add 6k squared to both sides. That's going to give us 8k squared minus 42 equals 16k. We're going to subtract 16k from both sides. That's going to give us 8k squared minus 16k minus 42 equals 0. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to divide by 8. Now, when you divide by 8 here, you're going to notice something unfortunate. And that is c doesn't go into 8, or 8 doesn't go into 42 evenly. So we end up with negative 5.2. Not really a big deal, as you'll see. Or 5.25. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 5.25 to both sides. So now we have k squared minus 2k equals 5.25. So our b equals negative 2, b over 2 equals negative 1, and b over 2 squared equals 1. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. And we have k squared minus 2k plus 1 equals 6.25. So I'm going to go k minus 1, that's my b over 2, squared equals 6.25. Square root both sides. I have k minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 6.25. Add 1 to both sides. And so my answer is then k equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 6.25. Same general idea for this next one. We're going to add 6x squared to both sides. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So that's going to be 2x squared plus 12x minus 14 equals 0. So we're going to divide everything by 2. And we're going to get x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So we get x squared plus 6x equals 7. So b equals 6. B over 2 equals 3. And b over 2 squared equals 9. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add 9 to both sides. So we have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 16. We then factor out the left-hand side to x plus b over 2 squared. X plus 3 squared equals 16. Square root both sides, and we get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 4. Subtract 3 from both sides, and we get x equals negative 3 plus or minus 4. Negative 3 plus 4 is negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So that's our answer. Okay, so As a bonus, I'm also throwing in some stuff from the next one, 4-7. So that is if ax squared plus bx equals c. So that's what I would have everybody kind of draw at the top of the 4-7 worksheet. If ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2. So on each of these, what you need to do is identify a, b, c. So for our first one here, we have a equals 1, b equals negative 8, and c equals 15, because the equation is x squared minus 8x plus 15 equals 0. So negative 8 plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 8 squared, minus 4a, 1 times c, 15. All of that goes over 2a, or 2 times 1. Then all we have to do is solve. Negative 8 turns into positive 8. Plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared, 64. Minus 4 times 1, 4 times 15, 60. All over 2. So we get 8 plus or minus the square root of 4 over 2, or 8 plus or minus 2 over 2. So that's going to break into two separate answers. 8 plus 2 over 2, or 10 over 2, or 5. And 8 minus 2 over 2, or 6 over 2, or 3. So those are my answers to that equation. X equals 5, or 3. Now look at number 4. So we're going to subtract 7x from both sides. And that's going to give me 2x squared minus 7x plus 3 equals 0. See how the first thing we do is we set it up to where it looks like our standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So then what we're going to do is we're going to label them. A equals 2, b equals negative 7, and c equals 3. So we have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times 2 all over 2a. So that's going to give me negative 7, negative 7 is positive 7, plus or minus the square root of 49 minus 24, that's 4 times 2 times 3, all over 2a. That's 7 plus or minus the square root of 25 over 4, or 7 plus or minus 5 over 4. Now if we go 7 plus 5 over 4, we get 12 over 4, or 3. If we go 7 minus 5 over 4, we get 2 over 4, or 1/2. And so those are my two answers. So on number 11, what we want to do is, the first thing we want to do is distribute that 4x, right? So now we have 4x squared plus 4x, because we want 4x times x, that's 4x squared. 4x times 1 is 4x equals 7. So we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. Now we have 4x squared plus 4x minus 7 equals 0. So now we have it in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we identify a equals 4, b equals 4, c equals negative 7. Plug it into the formula, right? So we go like that. Now notice here when I get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 112 over 4 times 4. So that gives me negative 4 plus or minus 128 over 16. Now the square root of 128, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this and I'm going to go, okay, 128 is divisible by 4. I know that because 28 is divisible by 4. And if the last two digits of a number are divisible by 4, then the whole number is divisible by 4. So we have 4 times 32. I know that 32 is 2 times 16. So when I'm looking at this, I see that 4 perfect square. I see that 16 a perfect square. And then in my mind, I go, hey, that's 64 times 2, which gives me 8 radical 2. So now I have negative 4 plus or minus 8 radical 2 over 16, all of those 4, 8, and 16 divisible by 4. So I have negative 1 plus or minus 2 radical 2 over 4. Okay, and we already did the word problem in class. This is basically what you do. You set it up as y equals x squared minus 12x plus 45. Okay, that's the problem. Now you want to know when it first sells 100 copies. Well, y equals the number of books sold, so you set that equation equal to 100. Then when you divide by, or not divide, but you subtract 100 because you want to set it to 0. So that's where this step would be right here. Subtract 100 from both sides. I get 0 equals negative, or x squared minus 12x minus 55. Label the points. Run it through the quadratic formula. And notice that I get x equals 12 plus or minus. Now here, because we're looking for a specific answer, we don't leave it as 364 over 2. We actually go, okay, it's going to be 19.1. It's actually like 19.07 something. So what we're going to do there is we look at this. Now, if I subtract it, I get negative 6.8 something or 6.9 something over 2, which gives me negative 3.5 days. That doesn't make sense. So really what we're looking for is a positive answer here. So we got 12 plus 19.1 over 2, or 31.1 over 2, or 15.5. So the first time that we're going to sell 100 copies is on the 16th day. Okay, so after 16 days, I'll sell at least 100 copies per day. Hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, ask me in class. Have a good night, everybody. I will see you guys tomorrow.